The smell of burnt toast mingles with the acrid scent of tears as Scarlett scrapes the blackened bread into the trash. Her hands will not stop trembling. They have not stopped since last night, when Derek sat across from her at this very kitchen table in their cramped Bronx studio and asked for an open marriage. But that was not all. He had also told her about Jessica, his co-worker, the woman he has been sleeping with for 2 years, the woman he now lives with in a luxury Manhattan apartment paid for with money from their joint account, the account Scarlett fills with every dollar from her 3 jobs while he gives her barely enough for subway fare and lunch. An open marriage. The words still taste like poison on her tongue. 3 years of devotion, of sacrificing her college degree to support him, of watching her mother wither away from stage 3 cancer while drowning in $50,000 of medical debt, of believing that at least she had a husband who loved her. Reduced to those 3 clinical words, he had said it so casually, fork halfway to his mouth, as if he were asking her to pass the salt instead of permission to keep sleeping with other women while she worked herself to death. "It is not about you, Scarlett," he had said, his voice patronizingly gentle. "I just think we would both benefit from exploring our options. We are still young. Do you not want to experience more of life?" She had stared at him, at this man she barely recognized anymore, and felt something inside her crack clean through. The same crack that formed when her father died in a workplace accident when she was 16 and no one paid a cent in compensation. The same crack that widened when she dropped out of her 3rd year of design school to pay for her mother's chemotherapy. The same crack that has been splitting her apart piece by piece for 27 years. Now, in the harsh morning light filtering through the grimy window of their studio apartment, Scarlett feels hollowed out, invisible, like she could fade into the water-stained walls, and no one would notice she was gone. The apartment feels smaller today, suffocating, filled with the ghost of the life she thought she had. She catches her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone. Blue eyes that once sparkled now look like faded denim. Auburn hair that once gleamed like copper now hangs limp and lifeless around her gaunt face. 27 years old, and she already looks 40. 27 years old, and she already looks defeated. 27 years old, and she is already dying, just more slowly than her mother. Derek is not here. He has not been here for months, except when Jessica kicks him out or when he needs someone to scream at. Last night was both. Scarlett can still feel the echo of his words, sharper than any slap. "Look at yourself. You have gotten so fat. Who would want to sleep with you? Why did I even marry someone like you? Your mother is dying and you cannot even afford to save her. Useless. You are completely useless." Part of her wants to call him, to demand answers, to ask when she stopped being enough. But the larger part, the part that has been slowly learning to make itself smaller over 3 years of marriage, over 11 years of loss, over a lifetime of never being seen, just wants to disappear. Her phone buzzes. A text from her sister Mia. "Need help tonight. Big event at the Obsidian Club. 4 servers called in sick. $500 for 1 night. I know you need money for mom. $500. 1 week of her regular salary." Scarlett does not know what the Obsidian Club is. She does not know that in 12 hours, she will walk through its black marble doors, and her entire life will change. She does not know that a pair of storm gray eyes will find her across a crowded room and see her, truly see her, for the first time in her existence. She does not know that by the end of this night, she will meet Lucian Moretti, and nothing will ever be the same again. If you want to know what happens when Scarlett meets the most dangerous man on the East Coast, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with someone who believes in second chances. And stay tuned, because in the world of Lucian Moretti, love is the deadliest game of all. Scarlett arrived at the Obsidian Club at 6 in the evening after riding 2 subway lines and walking 4 blocks. As she stood before the building, she felt as if she had stepped into another world. The front of the club was a massive slab of obsidian, black and glossy like a mirror, with no sign and no name. Only 2 men in black suits guarding the door with eyes as cold as ice. Scarlett swallowed, and went instead to the staff entrance at the back as Mia had told her to. Her sister was already waiting there, her blonde hair tied neatly up, her face tight with tension but her eyes lighting up when she saw her. Mia pulled Scarlett inside at once, leading her down a long hallway with walls covered in black velvet and dim golden lights. "You look terrible," Mia said as they walked, her voice full of worry. "Did something happen?" Scarlett shook her head, not wanting to speak about Derek, not wanting to speak about last night, not wanting to speak about anything at all, because she only needed $500 and she only needed to get through this night. Mia brought her into the changing room, a small space with uniform lockers and a large mirror on the wall, and handed her a tight black vest, a white shirt, and a black bow tie. "Put it on," she said, and I will explain everything." Scarlett changed in silence, feeling the soft fabric cling to her thin body, and when she looked into the mirror, she barely recognized herself because the uniform hid some of her exhaustion. But her blue eyes were still empty like two dry wells. "Listen to me," Mia began, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. "The Obsidian Club is not a normal club. This is a place for the richest and most powerful people in New York. And when I say powerful, I do not mean only chief executives or politicians. I mean the people who truly control this city from the shadows." Scarlett frowned, not understanding what her sister meant. Mia sighed and went on. "Tonight is a very important event. Everyone who comes here is someone you do not want to draw attention from. Do not look directly into their eyes. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not spill anything. And most importantly," Mia grabbed Scarlett's arm tightly, "never ever go near the man sitting at the table in the center." "Which man?" Scarlett asked, her voice dry. "Lucian Moretti," Mia answered, and the name alone made Scarlett shiver, though she did not know why. "He is the head of the Moretti family." "Do you know the Moretti family?" Scarlett shook her head, because she knew nothing about this world. She only knew about hospital bills, about rent, about 3 jobs a day, and a husband who was never home. Mia looked at her with pity and fear, and explained that they controlled almost all of the underground activity on the East Coast, and that Lucian Moretti was the boss of them all. People called him the Silent Death because those who angered him disappeared without a sound. Some said he had killed his own father to take power. Some said he never forgave betrayal. Some said he was beautiful as an angel and cold as a devil. And all of that, Mia finished, her voice trembling slightly, was true. Scarlett felt a chill run down her spine. She should have been afraid. She should have gone back to her small broken studio apartment and forgotten about the $500. But then she thought of her mother, of the hospital room with the machines beeping, of her pale face growing thinner every day, and she knew she had no choice. "I understand," Scarlett said, her voice calmer than she felt. "I will be careful." Mia looked at her a moment longer as if she wanted to say something more, but only nodded. "Good. The event starts at 7. You will serve the east side of the hall. Stay away from the center table. And my sister." Mia took her hand one last time before they went out. "No matter what happens, do not let him notice you." Scarlett nodded, not knowing that this warning would become meaningless within only a few hours. She stepped into the grand hall with a silver tray in her hands, merging into the serving staff, becoming an invisible ghost among the sea of luxury. She had always been used to being invisible. She had lived her whole life like a ghost, and she did not know that tonight, for the first time in 27 years, someone would truly see her. The event had been underway for 1 hour. Scarlett moved like a shadow through the crowd, carrying a tray of champagne from one group of guests to another. She kept her eyes lowered, kept her steps light, kept her presence as small as possible. The grand hall of the Obsidian Club was more luxurious than she had imagined. The ceilings soared high, with black crystal chandeliers glittering like thousands of stars in the night. The black marble floor, veined with gold, reflected the dim light. The dark mahogany walls, the enormous oil paintings, the fresh flower arrangements that cost more than her monthly pay. And the guests? They were creatures from another world. Men in suits that cost more than Scarlett's apartment. Women shimmering with diamonds and pearls, all of them radiating the confidence that comes from never having had to worry about money or anything else in their lives. Scarlett felt like a stain on white silk, but she was used to it. She had lived her whole life this way, on the margins, looking at other people's lives from the outside of a glass window. She had just set a glass of champagne on the table of a woman wearing a diamond necklace when the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed. It was not something she could put into words. It was like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room, like the air pressure had suddenly doubled. The laughter and chatter around her did not stop completely, but it dropped, as if everyone were trying not to draw attention. Scarlett lifted her head by instinct, and she saw the crowd automatically parting to either side, forming an invisible path from the main door into the center of the hall. Then she saw him. Lucian Moretti entered as if he owned not only this room, but the world beyond it. He was tall, taller than most men in the room, perhaps over 1.85 meters. His hair was black as ink, cut short and neatly swept back from his high forehead. His face looked carved from marble, with features so sharp they were almost cruel. A square jaw, high cheekbones, a straight nose as if measured with a ruler. But his eyes, God, those eyes. They were gray like the sky before a storm, cold and deep, as if they had seen every terrible thing in this world, and nothing could move them anymore. He wore a black 3-piece suit, tailored to perfection, hugging a solid body that seemed made of steel and shadow. No tie. The top two buttons of his shirt opened to reveal a hint of dark tattoo on his chest that Scarlett could not quite see from this distance. He moved with the confidence of a predator, every step precise and deliberate, as if he knew exactly where he was, and the world around him had to adjust itself to fit him. Two men walked behind him, each about a meter away. They were not ordinary bodyguards. Scarlett knew it at once from the way they moved, the way their eyes constantly scanned the room, the way their bodies were always ready. She had seen that look before in veterans who came to the diner where she worked. These were men who had killed and were ready to kill again without hesitation. Scarlett knew she should look away. Mia's warning rang in her mind like an alarm bell. Do not let him notice you. She should lower her head, turn away, become the invisible ghost she had always been. But her body did not obey. Her feet felt nailed to the marble floor. Her eyes felt magnetized to that man, unable to turn away even for a second. There was something about Lucien Moretti that made it hard for her to breathe. Not his beauty, though he was beautiful in the most dangerous way possible. Not the wealth that showed in every detail of him, but his power. That raw, primal power that did not need to be displayed, yet made everyone in the room feel it. The power of someone at the top of the food chain who knew no one could touch him. The kind of power that made Scarlett, who had spent 27 years learning to bow her head and make herself small, suddenly want to stand straight and be seen. Lucien Moretti stopped in the center of the hall and exchanged a few words with a gray-haired man. His lips did not smile. His face was like a mask of stone. But there was something in the way he stood, the way he tilted his head to listen, the way he completely controlled the space around him, that made Scarlett feel as if she were looking at the sun. She knew it would burn her if she came too close. But she could not look away. Scarlett did not know how long she had been standing there, staring at the man in the center of the hall like someone under a spell. The champagne on her tray trembled slightly with the wild rhythm of her heart inside her chest. She knew she had to look away. She knew she was breaking every rule Mia had given her. But there was something about Lucien Moretti that held her in place, an invisible pull she could not resist, as if he were the center of the universe, and she were only a small planet being drawn into his orbit. Then it happened. Lucien Moretti lifted his head. He turned his face toward her, and those storm-gray eyes found her through the crowd. Not by chance, not by accident. He looked straight at her as if he had known exactly where she was standing from the moment he had entered the room. The world stopped. Scarlett no longer heard the soft music from the live band in the corner. She no longer heard the polite laughter of the elegant guests. She no longer felt the weight of the champagne tray in her hands, or the tight ache of the high heels squeezing her sore feet. All that existed in that moment were the gray eyes looking at her, through her, as if they could see every crack, every wound, every broken piece inside her. This was not how people looked at a waitress. This was not how Derek looked at her, as if she were a worn-out piece of furniture he had grown tired of. This was not how the world had looked at her for 27 years, looking past her, looking as if she did not exist. Lucien Moretti looked at her, truly looked at her, as if she were the only thing in this room full of rich and powerful people worth stopping for and noticing. Scarlett forgot how to breathe. She felt as if she were naked in the middle of the crowd. All the secrets she had hidden laid bare under that cold gray gaze. He knows, she thought irrationally. He knows about Derek. He knows about her mother. He knows about the nights she cried alone in the dark. He knows she is falling apart piece by piece and no one has bothered to notice. The expression on Lucien's face did not change. It was still that cold stone mask. But something moved in his eyes. A flicker she could not read. Curiosity, interest, or only the recognition of a predator discovering new prey. She did not know. She only knew that in 27 years of being alive, this was the first time she felt seen. Truly seen. Not as a servant, not as a failed wife, not as a daughter without enough money to save her mother, but as herself. Scarlett, the person behind all the roles she had played her entire life. The moment stretched out like eternity. It might have been only seconds. It might have been minutes. It might have been a lifetime. Scarlett no longer knew. Time had lost its meaning as she sank into those storm eyes. Then someone called his name. Lucien. A deep male voice sounded behind him. I need to speak with you for a moment. The gray eyes left her. The connection was cut like a string snapped in mid-vibration. Lucien turned away and walked toward the gray-haired man who was calling him, and Scarlett suddenly felt as if someone had pulled all the air out of her lungs. She staggered back one step. The champagne tray tilted dangerously, the glasses clinking together. She hurried to steady it, trying to remember where she was, what she was doing, who she was, but her hands would not stop shaking. Her heart was still pounding as if it wanted to break out of her chest. And her skin, where his gaze had just touched, was still burning as if scorched by an invisible fire. Scarlett hurried into a darker corner of the hall, hiding behind a marble column, trying to calm her rapid breathing. She did not understand what had just happened. She only knew that something had changed. Something inside her had awakened after a long sleep of 27 years, and she was not sure whether that was a good thing or a bad one. Scarlett allowed herself to stand behind the marble column for a few more minutes to steady herself. She breathed deeply, forcing her heart to slow, forcing her hands to stop shaking. She could not let a single look from a stranger undo the calm she had spent years building. She had work to do. She had $500 to earn. She had a mother lying in a hospital bed waiting for every dollar of medical fees. She did not have time to stand here trembling over a man who had looked at her for a few seconds and then turned away as if she had never existed. Scarlett smoothed the black vest, lifted the champagne tray, and walked back into the hall with straight shoulders and an empty face. She was used to this. Putting on a mask, hiding every feeling, becoming the ghost the world wanted her to be. She moved among the groups of guests, smiling mechanically, dipping her head slightly when someone took a glass from her tray. She tried not to look toward the center of the hall where she knew Lucian Moretti was standing. She tried not to search for those storm-gray eyes in the crowd. She tried to forget the feeling of being seen through, the feeling of being truly seen for the first time in her life. It was only an illusion, she told herself. It was only her tired mind playing tricks on her. Men like Lucian Moretti did not look at women like her. Men like Lucian Moretti did not see ghosts. She was walking past the western side of the hall when she realized she had stepped into a forbidden zone. The table there held about 6 men, all in expensive suits, all laughing loudly over bottles of costly whiskey, and the man in the center, the one speaking the loudest and laughing the hardest, was a heavy man with a face flushed red and small cloudy eyes from drink. Anthony Ricci. Scarlett recognized the name from the whispers of the other servers, Moretti's enemy. The man who wanted his throne, and at this moment the man who was drunk in the middle of the party. She should have turned away. She should have found another path, but it was too late. Ricci had seen her tray and waved her over. "Hey you, bring that drink here." Scarlett swallowed and stepped forward. She kept her eyes down, kept the tray steady, kept her breathing even. She only had to set a few glasses on the table and leave. Only a few seconds. She could do this. She had just leaned in to place a glass down when Ricci flung his arm up while telling a joke to his companions. His thick arm struck the champagne tray. Everything happened in slow motion. The tray tilted. The glasses slid off the silver surface. Golden liquid flew into the air like a ribbon before pouring down, soaking Ricci's expensive white suit. The table fell silent. The whole area fell silent. Scarlett stood there with the empty tray in her hands, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what was coming. She had lived through enough moments like this to recognize it. Ricci looked down at his soaked suit. His face went from red to a dark purple. He jumped to his feet, the chair crashing backward with a loud sound. "You clumsy whore," he roared, loud enough for the whole hall to hear. "Do you know how much this suit costs? Your whole year's pay would not be enough to cover it." Scarlett lowered her head, her body slipping into the survival mode she had learned after 3 years with Derek. "Make yourself small. Do not look into his eyes. Do not fight back. Do not make it worse." "I am sorry, sir," she said, her voice small and flat. "I will pay for it. I will." Her words were cut off by Ricci's hand. The slap came so fast and so hard that Scarlett staggered to the side and almost fell. Her cheek burned as if on fire. Her ears rang, the world blurring for a few seconds. She tasted blood where her lip had been cut by her teeth. The entire hall sank into a deadly silence. No one spoke. No one moved. The other servers stood frozen, eyes wide in horror. The elegant guests turned their faces away, pretending not to see, because this was the world of the powerful, and she was only a waitress, a nobody, a ghost not worth their concern. Scarlett straightened. She did not cry. She had forgotten how to cry in front of others long ago. She only stood there, eyes on the marble floor, cheeks swollen and red, lip bleeding, waiting for the next storm the way she had waited for 3 years, every time Derek came home drunk. "Look at her," Ricci sneered, turning to his companions. "She cannot even apologize properly. These cheap servers." He was about to say something more when a voice cut through, cold as ice, sharp as a blade. "Let her go." The voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It cut through the air like a sharpened blade, and every other sound in the hall seemed to fall into nothingness. Scarlett lifted her head, her cheek still burning, her lips still bleeding, and she saw Lucian Moretti standing less than 5 meters away. He stood there in a relaxed posture, both hands in his pockets, as if he were strolling in a park rather than facing one of his most dangerous enemies. But those gray eyes, The eyes that had found Scarlet through the crowd only minutes before were now cold as a frozen hell. There was no burst of anger, no visible rage, only absolute coldness, and somehow that was more frightening than any fury. Ricci spun around, his face still flushed with drink and anger. When he saw Lucian, there was a brief flicker of fear in his cloudy eyes, but he quickly covered it with a sneer, the smile of a man trying to look strong when he knows he is weak. "Moretti," he slurred, his breath thick with alcohol. "This is not your business. The girl spilled wine on my suit." Lucian did not answer at once. He only stepped forward, one step at a time, slow and deliberate. Each footfall echoed on the marble floor like a war drum. The crowd automatically parted, forming a path between him and Ricci. Lucian's 2 bodyguards moved behind him. One of them, whom Scarlet guessed was Victor from what Mia had said, tall with closely cut hair and a square jaw that looked carved from stone. Lucian stopped about 2 meters from Ricci. He still did not take his hands from his pockets. He still did not raise his voice, but his presence filled the space, pressing down on everyone like an invisible weight. "She is standing in my club," Lucian said calmly, as if speaking about the weather. "Everything in my club is my business. That includes how you treat my staff." Ricci swallowed but tried to remain composed. "She spilled the wine. You struck her tray." Lucian cut in, each word like a bullet. "I saw it." A deadly silence fell. Scarlet stood there numb, unable to believe what was happening. She, a nameless waitress, was being defended by the most powerful crime lord on the East Coast, in front of hundreds of people. It made no sense. It could not be real. Ricci licked his lips, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead even though the hall was cool. "I might have done it by accident," he began. "You slapped her." Lucian stepped closer, only one step, but Ricci moved back too as if pushed by an invisible force. "I do not like to see men hit women, Ricci. Especially not in my club. Especially not in front of me." Something dangerous coiled beneath that calm voice, like a snake drawing itself tight before striking. Scarlet felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. Now she understood why people called him the Silent Death. Lucian Moretti did not need to shout or threaten. His danger lay in that very calm, in the way he could order a killing with the same tone others used to order breakfast. Lucian turned to Victor behind him. "Victor, escort Mr. Ricci outside, and make sure he never steps into any Moretti establishment again." Ricci's face drained of color, all drunken aggression vanishing as if it had never been there. "You cannot do this, Lucian. We have an agreement." "We have." "The agreement is cancelled," Lucian cut in without a flicker. "You have 10 seconds to walk out on your own, or Victor will help you, and I promise you will not like the way Victor helps people." Victor stepped forward, huge as a mountain, his face blank. Ricci looked around for help from his companions, but they all turned away. In this world, no one stands with the loser, especially when the winner is Lucian Moretti. Ricci opened his mouth as if to say more, but Victor had already seized his arm and begun dragging him away. "This is not over, Moretti," Ricci shouted as he was hauled toward the door. "You will regret this." Lucian did not even turn to look. He stood there, back straight, eyes still cold as ice, until Ricci's shouting vanished beyond the hall doors. The entire room remained silent. No one dared move. No one dared breathe too loudly. They had all just witnessed a lesson in power, and no one wanted to become the next example. When the hall doors closed behind Ricci, Lucian Moretti turned to look at Scarlet. The crowd around them began to murmur softly, slowly returning to their celebration as if nothing had happened. But Scarlet heard nothing. She saw only the gray eyes moving toward her, and her body stiffened automatically like an animal cornered. Lucian stopped in front of her, closer than anyone had stood to her in many years. She could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something darker and more dangerous, like the scent of a coming storm. She could feel the warmth of his body, in complete contrast to the ice-cold eyes looking down at her. "Your cheek," Lucian said, his voice no longer sharp as when he faced Ricci, but still carrying an authority that could not be refused. "Let me see." It was not a question. It was a command. And before Scarlet could react, his hand had already lifted. In that instant, everything inside her screamed at once. The survival instinct honed through 3 years with Derek, through hundreds of nights curled up waiting for her husband's rage, activated automatically. She closed her eyes. She shrank back. She turned her face away, raised her shoulders, clenched the empty tray to her chest like a useless shield. She waited for the blow the way she had waited 1,000 times before. But the blow did not come. Instead, cool fingers touched her chin with unexpected gentleness. They lifted her face slowly and carefully, as if she were something fragile that needed to be handled with care. Scarlett opened her eyes in confusion and saw Lucian looking at her with an expression she could not read. Not the cruel coldness she had seen when he dismissed Ricci. Not the curiosity when he had found her through the crowd. This was something else, something deeper and darker, as if she had brushed against an old wound he had kept hidden for a long time. Lucian turned her face into the light, studying the bruise forming on her cheek, the small cut on her lower lip. His fingers moved lightly along the line of the injury, not touching, only hovering like a breath of air. And Scarlett, who was used to rough hands and blows hidden behind closed doors, did not know how to respond to this gentleness. "Who?" Lucian asked quietly, only loud enough for the two of them to hear. Scarlett blinked. "What? Who made you so afraid of being hit that you closed your eyes and waited just now?" The question pierced the armor she had built around herself. Scarlett felt her breath catch in her throat. She wanted to lie. She wanted to say she had only flinched. She wanted to say there was no one. But those gray eyes saw through her, through every mask she wore, seeing the broken girl inside she had hidden for years. She did not answer. She could not answer. 3 years with Derek had taught her never to speak, never to admit, never to let anyone know, because once she said it, she would have to face the truth that she had let a man treat her like garbage, and she had stayed, endured, hoped it would one day be different. Lucian did not force her. He only looked at her a moment longer, his eyes darkening with something like anger, but not anger at her. Then he released her, reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, and drew out a card. The card was black as a moonless night. No name, no title, no company logo, only a line of 11 digits printed in silver that glinted under the lights. "If you need anything," Lucian said, placing the card in Scarlett's hand, "call this number, anytime, for anything." Scarlett looked down at the card, then up at him, not understanding why the most powerful crime lord in New York would give his personal number to a nameless waitress. "Why?" she asked hoarsely. Lucian did not answer her question. Instead, he turned to the second bodyguard behind him. "Marco, take her home. Make sure she gets there safely." "I still have a shift," Scarlett stammered. "I need my pay. My mother." "You will be paid for tonight," Lucian cut in, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Plus compensation for what just happened. Now go home. Rest. Put ice on your cheek." Then he turned away and walked back into the crowd as if the conversation were over and she no longer existed. Scarlett stood there with the black card trembling in her hand, watching his tall figure until it disappeared into the sea of people. She did not understand what had just happened. She did not understand why her fingers were still warm where he had touched her. She did not understand why her heart was racing as if she had just run a marathon. "Miss Marco," the bodyguard said gently. "The car is waiting at the back door." Scarlett nodded like a sleepwalker. She followed Marco out of the hall, down the black velvet corridor, out the back door, where a sleek black Mercedes waited. She slid into the back seat, still clutching the black card as if it were her only lifeline in the ocean. And all the way back to her shabby studio in the Bronx, she could think of nothing but the storm gray eyes and the unexpectedly gentle hand of the man the world called the Silent Death. 2 days passed. Scarlett hid the black card inside the old copy of Jane Eyre her mother had given her when she was 10. The only book she had taken with her when she moved in with Derek. Each night she took it out, looked at the silver numbers glinting under the dim light, then put it away without calling. She did not know what she was waiting for. She did not know why she did not throw it away as she probably should have. She only knew that every time she looked at that card she remembered the feel of cool fingers lifting her chin, and her heart beat a little faster. On the second night Derek came home. She heard the key scraping in the lock near midnight, the unsteady footsteps in the hallway, the curse when he tripped over the shoes she had left by the door. Scarlett lay on the old sofa pretending to sleep, hoping he would go straight to bed without noticing her, but she did not have that luck. "Wake up!" Derek kicked her foot. "Jessica threw me out. That bitch thinks she is someone." Scarlett sat up slowly, kept her eyes down, kept her body in a non-threatening posture. She had learned this after many painful failures. Do not look him in the eye. Do not argue. Do not make him angrier. But tonight Derek wanted a fight. Tonight he needed someone to pour his anger into after being thrown out of the high-end apartment whose rent Scarlett paid. He began with the familiar words, the knives she had heard hundreds of times and that still hurt like the first time. "You are too fat. You are too ugly. You are useless. Why did I marry someone like you? Your mother is dying and you cannot even earn enough to save her. A burden. A piece of trash." Then he saw the bruise on her cheek, the bruise that had turned from red to purple after 2 days. "Who hit you?" he asked, not with concern but with poisonous curiosity. "Or were you sleeping with some guy and he hit you?" Scarlett did not answer. She knew anything she said would be used against her. Silence was the only way to survive nights like this. Derek went on for another hour before collapsing into bed and falling asleep drunk. The apartment sank into silence, broken only by his snoring and Scarlett's heart in her chest. She sat there on the sofa, hugging a pillow, staring into the dark, and felt something inside her finally reach bottom. At 3 a.m, when she could not sleep, when Derek's words still twisted in her mind like small knives, she took out the black card. She looked at it for a long time. Then, with trembling fingers, she typed the number into her phone and sent a short message. "Thank you for that night. I am fine." She did not expect a reply. At 3 a.m, the most powerful crime lord on the East Coast surely would not be awake to answer a message from a nameless waitress. But her phone vibrated in less than a minute. "You are not fine." Scarlett stared at the screen, her heart racing. She typed back, "How do you know?" "Because people who are fine do not text strangers at 3 a.m. She did not know what to reply. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her thoughts drifting. Then she typed, "You are awake at 3 a.m. too." The reply came at once. "I am never fine." Something in those 5 words caught her breath. The naked honesty. The admission that even the most powerful could be broken inside. She did not know why a crime lord would say that to her, a complete stranger. She only knew that in that moment she felt a little less alone. They texted a few more times. Not about anything specific. Not asking deep questions. Just 2 strangers awake in the night, both staring into the dark, sharing a brief moment of truth in a world full of lies. "You should sleep," Lucian texted near 4. "I cannot sleep. I know, but you should still try." Then after a long pause, another message came. "If you need me, call. Anytime. I will answer." Scarlett looked at the screen until it went dark. She did not know why her eyes burned. She did not know why her heart was beating as if trying to break out of her chest. She only knew that tonight, for the first time in many years, she felt that someone was listening. The next morning, Scarlett woke with swollen eyes and a body as tired as if it had never rested. Derek was already gone, probably back to apologize to Jessica, leaving the apartment messy and the smell of alcohol soaked into every corner. She cleaned in silence, showered, put on her old restaurant uniform, and went to work as usual. Life did not stop because she was hurting. Bills did not disappear because she was exhausted. Her mother still needed chemotherapy money every month, even if Scarlett's heart was breaking into 100 pieces. The restaurant where Scarlett worked during the day was a small diner on the corner of a poor Bronx street, serving construction workers and broke students. The yellow paint on the walls was peeling. The plastic chairs were worn. The tile floor cracked. She had worked there for 3 years, long enough to know the menu by heart, long enough to know every regular's name, long enough to become part of the furniture that no one truly noticed. The morning passed in the familiar rhythm of carrying plates, wiping tables, smiling at customers while inside she felt herself slowly dying. Near noon, she was wiping a table by the window when a murmur spread through the diner. She looked up and saw everyone staring out at the street, where a sleek black Bentley had just pulled up in front of the diner like a lost beast in a poor neighborhood. Scarlett's heart skipped a beat. She knew that car. She knew who would step out before the door even opened, and Lucian Moretti appeared in the noon sunlight. He wore a charcoal gray suit, a white shirt without a tie, his black hair perfectly swept back. He looked as if he had stepped out of a luxury fashion magazine, completely out of place in this neighborhood, completely out of place in her world. Lucian entered the diner, and every sound stopped. The workers stopped chewing. The students stopped talking. The owner behind the counter stared with his mouth open, as if he had seen a ghost. No one here knew who Lucian Moretti was, but everyone knew he did not belong here, and everyone felt the power radiating from him like heat from the sun. The gray eyes swept across the room once, and then stopped on Scarlett. He walked toward her, every step certain and deliberate, as if she were the only reason he had come here, and perhaps she was. "You," Lucian stopped in front of her, his low voice familiar from the messages the night before. "Lunch break, now." Scarlett looked at him, then at her dirty uniform, then back at him. "I am working. I cannot." "You can," Lucian cut in. Not as an order, but with absolute certainty. "I have already spoken to your boss." Scarlett turned to the owner, who nodded eagerly with a nervous smile. "Go, Scarlett, it is fine. Take as long as you need." She turned back to Lucian, wanting to refuse, wanting to say she could not leave her job in the middle of a shift, wanting to say she did not belong in his world. But the gray eyes looked at her with something she could not define, something that made every refusal die in her throat. "I am not dressed to go anywhere fancy," she said, knowing it was a weak excuse but unable to find another. Lucian looked her over from head to toe, not with judgment or disdain, but as if he saw something she did not see in herself. "You are perfect like this," he said without hesitation. "Come." Then he turned and walked out, not doubting she would follow. And Scarlett, who had spent her life obeying others, who was used to having no choices, found herself taking off her apron and following him out to the Bentley waiting in the midday sun. The Bentley took them to an Italian restaurant in the heart of Manhattan, the kind of place Scarlett had only ever seen through the glass when she passed by on her way to her night shifts. Clear windows, crystal chandeliers, dark wooden tables dressed in white linen, and servers in black suits moving softly like ghosts. When Scarlett stepped inside in her simple diner uniform that still smelled faintly of grease, she felt every eye turn toward her. Women in designer dresses and diamond jewelry looked at her with curiosity edged with disdain. But Lucian placed his hand at her back, gentle but certain, and guided her to a private table in a shadowed corner, as if she were the most valuable guest in the room. They sat facing each other. A server brought the menus, and Scarlett stared at the Italian names she did not understand with prices equal to a week of her pay. She set the menu down, not knowing what to order, not knowing what to say, not knowing why she was sitting here with the most dangerous crime lord on the East Coast, when she should have been carrying plates for construction workers and poor students. Lucian ordered for both of them in fluent Italian. Then the server disappeared, leaving them in a taut silence. Scarlett looked down at her hands, work-roughened fingers, short, unpainted nails, hands that did not belong on the white silk cloth beneath them. "Why?" she finally asked without lifting her head. "Why are you doing all of this?" "I am just a waitress. I am not beautiful, not rich, not powerful. I am nobody." Lucian did not answer at once. He studied her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Then he spoke. "What do you see when you look in the mirror?" Scarlett blinked, unprepared for the question. She thought of her reflection in her dark phone screen every morning. The blue eyes that had lost their light, the dry, reddish-brown hair, the face of a woman of 27 that looked like 40. "A failed woman," she said honestly. "Tired, slowly dying." Lucian nodded slowly as if her answer confirmed something he already knew. "Do you know what I see?" he asked, his voice low and slow. "I see a woman burning herself to keep others warm, while she herself is freezing. A woman so strong she does not notice she is breaking. And the most beautiful eyes I have ever seen. So sad that they make me want to find whoever made them that sad and teach him what real pain is." Scarlett lifted her head, her heart racing. She wanted to speak but could not find the words. She wanted to ask why he cared but did not dare. She could only look into those storm-gray eyes and feel herself sinking. "I have a proposal," Lucian continued, his tone sharpening slightly like when he discussed business. "Come work for me. I need a personal assistant. The pay is 10 times your current job." He paused. "It includes full medical insurance. For your mother as well." Scarlett felt as if someone had punched her in the stomach. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "How do you know about my mother?" Lucian tilted his head, showing no embarrassment. "I know everything about you, Scarlett Monroe. 27 years old, dropped out in your 3rd year of graphic design school, married Derek Hayes 3 years ago, mother with stage 3 cancer, $50,000 in medical debt." He looked straight into her eyes. "And your husband is openly cheating while you work 3 jobs to pay for an apartment he never stays in." Anger flared in Scarlett, hot and sharp as a blade. "You investigated me," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "You have no right." "I protect what I care about," Lucian cut in, his voice not wavering. "And to protect, I need to know. I am not yours to protect." Scarlett stood up, the chair scraping back loudly enough to draw looks from nearby tables. "I am not something you can buy with money and insurance. I am not." "Not yet," Lucian said, the word hanging between them like a promise or a threat. "You are not yet, but if you give me a chance, I will prove I am not trying to buy you. I want to help you, because you deserve to be helped." Scarlett stood there breathing hard, unsure whether to sit back down or walk away. The appetizer arrived, the server setting the plates down and disappearing quickly, sensing the tension. At last, Scarlett sat down slowly, but did not touch the food. "I need to think," she said wearily. "This is too much. I cannot decide right now." Lucian nodded, not disappointed or angry the way Derek was when she did not obey him. "You have time," he said. "The offer stands. Whenever you are ready." Lucian drove Scarlett back to the diner after a lunch she barely touched. She returned to work like someone in a dream, her mind spinning with what he had said, with that impossible offer, with the way he looked at her as if she had value. She could not accept it. She could not work for the Mafia. She could not owe anything to a dangerous man like Lucian Moretti. And yet she could not stop thinking about medical insurance for her mother, about a salary 10 times higher, about a chance to escape this hell of a life. That night, Scarlett reached her studio apartment near 10 after an extra shift at the bar. She was so tired her legs barely carried her, so tired her eyes barely stayed open. She wanted only a hot shower, her old sofa, and sleep that would erase everything. But when she opened the door, she froze as if nailed in place. Derek was sitting on her bed, and beside him was a woman. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a tight red dress, laughing softly as Derek whispered something in her ear. Jessica, the woman her husband had been sleeping with for 2 years. The woman living in a penthouse paid for with Scarlett's money. The woman now sitting on Scarlett's bed in Scarlett's apartment as if Scarlett were the intruder. Derek looked up when he heard the door. He showed no shame, no confusion. He only looked at Scarlett with irritation as if she were a fly that had wandered into his party. "Oh, you are back," he said drunkenly. "Listen, Jessica and I need some private time tonight. Go out for a few hours." Scarlett stood there, unable to believe her ears. "Go out," she repeated hoarsely. "This is my home. I pay the rent. Why should I leave?" Derek stood and walked toward her with the familiar threatening look. "Because I am telling you to," he growled. "Or do you want to make a scene so the whole building knows you are a wife who cannot keep her husband? Want me to tell everyone how useless you are?" Jessica laughed from the bed, the sound like needles in Scarlett's skin. She said nothing, only sat there with her long legs stretched out, looking at Scarlett like a pitiful insect. Something inside Scarlett finally broke. Not anger, not rage, but endurance. 3 years of trying. 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of believing that if she tried a little harder, if she were a little better, if she were a little smaller, Derek would love her. But now she understood. He had never loved her. He had never seen her as human. She was only a doormat he wiped his feet on and forgot. She turned and walked out without another word. She heard Derek and Jessica laughing behind her as the door closed, laughter like knives in her back. She walked down the hallway, down the stairs, out the back door of the building, and sat down on the cold concrete steps. The March night was still cuttingly cold. Scarlett had no coat. She sat there in her thin uniform, shaking with cold, and for the first time in many years she cried. Not the silent crying she swallowed down as she always did, but the breaking sobs of someone who had reached the bottom and had nothing left to lose. Tears ran down her face, down her neck, fell onto the concrete and vanished into the dark. She did not know how long she sat there. Minutes, perhaps. Hours, perhaps. She only knew that when she finally lifted her head, when the tears were gone and her body numb with cold, she had made a decision. She took out her phone with trembling fingers, opened the conversation with Lucian, and typed a short message. "I accept the job." The reply came at once, as if he had been waiting for it, as if he had known this would be the night she broke. "A car will pick you up in 30 minutes. Do not go back to that apartment. I will take care of everything." Scarlett stared at the screen until it went dark. She did not know what she had just stepped into. She did not know whether Lucian Moretti's world would devour her or save her. She only knew that tonight, for the first time in 3 years, she had chosen herself instead of choosing to endure. 1 week passed like a dream Scarlett was not sure she had truly woken from. That night, the black Mercedes came for her exactly as Lucian had promised, took her to a 5-star hotel in Manhattan, and told her to rest until everything was arranged. She slept in the softest bed she had ever known, in a room larger than the shabby studio she had lived in for 3 years, and when she woke the next morning, her life had already changed completely. Lucian had taken care of everything. Scarlett's belongings were moved out of the old apartment so she did not have to face Derek again. A lawyer was hired to begin the divorce. And most importantly, her mother was transferred from the crowded public hospital with its narrow halls and outdated machines to one of the best hospitals in New York, with a private room overlooking Central Park and a team of top specialists. When Scarlett visited her mother there for the first time, Catherine wept because she could not believe what she was seeing. Scarlett's new apartment was in a luxury building on the Upper East Side with round-the-clock security and a view of the Manhattan skyline. 1 bedroom, a spacious living room, a modern kitchen fully equipped, and a wardrobe already filled with elegant office clothes whose price tags Scarlett did not dare to look at. She walked through the rooms like someone lost in a fairy tale, touching every surface to make sure it was real. On her first day of work, Victor brought her to Moretti Tower in Midtown Manhattan. 50 floors of glass and steel rising into the sky like a monument to power and money. Lucian's office was on the top floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. Her assistant job was not what she had imagined. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous. She arranged meetings, organized documents, answered emails, and most of all, she accompanied Lucian to public events as his partner. But what confused her most was the way Lucian treated her. He never asked her to do anything unreasonable. He never looked at her with ownership or demand. He simply was there, asking if she had eaten breakfast, telling her to rest when she looked tired, listening when she spoke, truly listening, not the distracted nodding Derek had always given her. On the first weekend, Lucian called her into his office after work. He stood by the window with his back to her, looking down at the city lighting up in the sunset. Scarlett stood at the door, her heart beating fast, waiting for something. She did not know what she was waiting for. Perhaps the moment he would finally say what he really wanted from her. Perhaps the moment she would have to pay for everything he had given her. "You think I am trying to buy you," Lucian said without turning. "You think I want to turn you into something I own." Scarlett swallowed. "If you want something from me, then say it directly," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I do not like debts." Lucian turned, his gray eyes on her with something she could not name. "I do not want you to owe me anything," he said slowly and quietly. "What I want from you cannot be bought with money." "Then what do you want?" "Your time." Lucian stepped closer, stopping a single step away. "Your trust." He looked down at her, almost 20 centimeters taller, but not overpowering or threatening. "And one day perhaps your heart. But only if you give it freely. I do not take what is not given." Scarlett did not know what to say. She stood there looking into those storm-gray eyes, and for the first time in her life she saw a man who did not demand she become something else. He wanted only her, Scarlett, her true self, and he was willing to wait. "I do not know if I can trust anyone anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. Lucian nodded, not disappointed. "I know," he said, "and I will wait until you are ready." The weeks that followed taught Scarlett that a person's true self is never revealed in grand moments. It is revealed in small details, in quiet moments no one notices, in actions that do not seek an audience, and she began to see the true Lucian Moretti in pieces like that. The first time was when she discovered he disappeared every Saturday afternoon. Victor only said the boss had private business, but Scarlett was curious. One day, she followed Lucian's car to an old orphanage on the edge of Brooklyn, where the paint was peeling and the playground rusted. She stood outside the window and looked in, and what she saw made her heart tighten. Lucian Moretti, the crime lord the underworld feared, was sitting on a small plastic chair among the orphaned children, reading a picture book aloud in a warm, low voice. The children clustered around him like fledglings, fighting to sit on his lap, holding his hands, laughing when he made silly faces. And Lucian, the man with ice-cold eyes, was smiling. A real smile. Not the cold curve of the mouth he showed the outside world. Scarlett did not tell Lucian what she had seen, but she began to notice more. She noticed the way he raised the cleaner's pay when he learned her daughter needed surgery. She noticed the way he forced Victor to take a week off to visit his sick mother in Sicily, even when Victor protested. She noticed the way he remembered every employee's name in the 50-floor building, from the security guards to the receptionist who had only been there 2 days. But what truly moved Scarlett was the way Lucian treated her mother. He visited Catherine once a week, not because Scarlett asked him to, but because he wanted to. He brought fresh flowers, poetry books Catherine loved, and sat by her bed for hours talking with her. Once Scarlett stood outside the hospital room and heard him telling her mother about Tuscany, about vineyards and green hills where his grandmother had lived. His voice was unexpectedly gentle, nothing like the cold tone he used in business meetings. And her mother, the woman who had closed herself off from the world since her husband died, was smiling at Lucian as if she had found a son again. "He is a good boy," her mother told Scarlett after one visit. "I see how he looks at you. Do not let him slip away, my daughter." Scarlett did not know what to answer. She was not yet ready to admit what was happening in her chest whenever Lucian entered a room. She was not ready to face the truth that her heart beat faster when he was near, that she began to look forward to seeing him every morning, that she felt empty on the days he traveled. But she also saw the other side of Lucian, the dark side the world called the silent death. She witnessed him in a meeting with a traitor, saw how the gray eyes turned from warm to cold in a blink, how the low voice sharpened like a blade. She did not hear what was said behind the closed door, but she saw the traitor carried out on a stretcher, his face pale with terror. Lucian did not kill him, but the man would wish he were dead. Scarlett knew she should be afraid, but strangely she was not. Perhaps because she knew that cruelty would never be turned on her. Perhaps because she understood that in Lucian's world softness meant death. He had to be a monster to protect those he loved, and somehow she had become one of them. She did not know exactly when she began to love him. Perhaps when he personally brought her soup when she caught a cold. Perhaps when he sat by her mother's bed and promised she would be cared for no matter what happened. Perhaps when he looked at her with storm-gray eyes, and she realized that beneath the cold ice was a heart deeply wounded, a heart trying to believe in love again. She only knew that when she realized she loved Lucian Moretti. It was already too late to turn back. The charity fundraiser was held in Lucian's penthouse on a Saturday night at the end of April. Scarlett stood before the mirror in the private dressing room Lucian had prepared for her, looking at the reflection of a woman she barely recognized. The long black silk gown brushed her ankles like dark water, soft Italian fabric clinging to her body. Bare shoulders, a back cut low enough to be alluring without being excessive. And around her neck, a platinum necklace with a sapphire blue as the ocean, the gift Lucian had placed on her desk that morning with a simple card. Your eye color, L. Scarlett touched the stone, feeling its weight against her skin, and wondered who the woman in the mirror was. Not the waitress, with extinguished eyes from 2 months ago. Not the invisible wife treated like garbage. This woman had blue eyes lit with new light, skin warm with rest, shoulders straight because she no longer had to bow. Lucian had not only given her a job and a home, he had given her back to herself. The evening passed smoothly. Scarlett stood beside Lucian all night, smiling at guests, answering curious questions about who she was with a confidence she did not know she possessed. She noticed the way Lucian kept her hand on his arm, the way he tilted his head to listen whenever she spoke, the way his gray eyes tracked her across the room even when he was speaking with others, and she noticed the jealous looks from other women. The unspoken question of why the most powerful crime lord on the East Coast had chosen a nameless girl instead of the beautiful heiresses waiting in line. Near midnight, when most guests had left and the penthouse had grown quiet, Lucian led Scarlett out to the balcony. The city stretched below like a carpet of lights, millions of lamps like fallen stars. The night breeze brushed her bare skin, carrying the scent of the city, of spring, of endless possibility. You know, Lucian said softly into the night, I have had everything. Money, power, all that people call success. He turned to her, his gray eyes deep in the dim light. But I have never had something that made me want to wake up in the morning. I have never had anyone who made me want to be better. Until you, Lucian, Scarlett whispered, her heart racing. I know who I am, Lucian continued, lifting her hand and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I know my world is dangerous. I know I have done unforgivable things. And I know you deserve better than a man like me. He lifted his gaze to hers. But I am selfish, Scarlett. I want you. Only you. And I will do whatever it takes to be worthy of you. Scarlett looked into those storm-gray eyes and saw a sincerity she had never seen in anyone else. Not in Derek. Not in any man before him. He did not promise fantasies. He did not claim perfection. He simply told the truth, naked and unhidden, and waited for her choice. She said nothing. She did not need to. She stepped forward, lifted her hands, and kissed him. The first kiss flared like fire in the cold night. Lucian's lips were warm and sure on hers, his arms around her waist as if afraid she would vanish if he let go. She felt the hunger in his kiss, the relief, the reverence. He kissed her as if she were oxygen and he had been suffocating his entire life. When they parted, both were breathless. Lucian rested his forehead against hers, his gray eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. At last, he whispered, Do you know how long I have waited for this? Scarlett smiled softly, her heart for the first time in years feeling whole. Perhaps as long as I have waited for someone to truly see me. 2 weeks after their first kiss, Scarlett's life felt as if it were floating on clouds. She and Lucian did not rush. They took their time with each other. Private dinners in the penthouse, mornings drinking coffee on the balcony watching the city wake, conversations that stretched late into the night about everything and nothing. Lucian told her about his childhood in Sicily, about the mother he lost when he was young, about the weight of inheriting an empire from his father. Scarlett told him about her dream of becoming a designer, about the years of caring for a sick mother, about the feeling of being invisible all her life. They learned to trust each other little by little, like two people rebuilding a house from ruins. But the past never leaves people alone when they are happy. That afternoon, Scarlett was in her apartment after work when the building security called. There was a man in the lobby causing trouble, demanding to see her, claiming to be her husband. Scarlett felt her blood freeze. Derek. She did not know how he had found her address, but she knew he would not give up easily. She told security to keep him there and called Lucian at once. When Scarlett reached the lobby, Derek was standing in the middle of the reception area, his face red with anger and perhaps with drink. He looked much worse than the last time she had seen him. Clothes wrinkled, beard unshaven, eyes bloodshot and wild. Jessica had thrown him out, she guessed, and now he was here to blame her as he always did. "There she is," Derek shouted when he saw her step out of the elevator. "There is my whore," he sneered, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "Who do you think you are, living in a fancy building, wearing expensive clothes, while I sleep on the street? Which mafia bastard are you selling yourself to? How much a night?" Scarlett stood there, feeling the curious eyes of staff and passing residents. She should have been ashamed. She should have wanted to disappear. But strangely, she felt nothing. Derek's words, once able to crush her into dust, were now only meaningless noise. She had changed. She was no longer the invisible girl curled on an old sofa. Derek stepped toward her, hand raised as if to grab her. "You are coming back with me," he growled. "You are still my wife. You belong to me." But before he could touch her, a hand appeared from behind and seized his wrist, crushing it until he fell to his knees in pain. Lucian stood there in his perfect black suit, but the gray eyes that looked at Derek were no longer warm. They were cold as frozen hell, like death waiting. "She belongs to no one," Lucian said in a low, even voice like water flowing under ice. "Especially not to trash like you." Derek struggled but could not escape. Lucian held him as one would hold an insect, without effort yet impossible to break free. "Who are you?" Derek stammered, fear finally cutting through his anger. "Do you know who I am? Scarlett is my wife." "I have the right." "You have no rights," Lucian cut in, bending so his gray eyes met Derek's. "You lost every right the moment you chose to treat her like garbage, the moment you brought another woman into her bed, the moment you thought you could abuse a woman without consequence." His grip tightened and Derek cried out, "Now listen, because I will say this only once. If you come within 100 meters of her, I will break each of your fingers. If you call her, I will cut out your tongue. And if you try to hurt her in any way, I will make sure you live long enough to regret every second of the rest of your life." Derek began to cry, not from pain but from pure fear. He looked into Lucian's eyes and understood this was not an empty threat but a promise from a man who had the power to do everything he said. "I understand," Derek sobbed, tears and mucus running down his face. I will not go near her again. Please let me go." Lucian released him, and Derek collapsed onto the floor. He did not stand. He crawled toward the door like a beaten dog, not daring to look back. The glass doors closed behind him, and Derek Hayes vanished from Scarlett's life forever. Lucian turned to Scarlett, the cold draining from his eyes and warmth returning as he looked at her. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Scarlett looked at him, the man who had protected her as no one ever had, the man who could be cruel as a devil to his enemies and gentle as water with her. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in the middle of the lobby, not caring who watched. "I am all right," she whispered against his chest. "Now I am." 1 week after the incident with Derek, Scarlett's life slowly returned to something like normal. She went to work, visited her mother, and spent her evenings with Lucian as if nothing had happened. But Lucian was not at ease. He increased security around her, making sure Victor or Marco was with her whenever she went out. Scarlett complained that she did not need a babysitter, but Lucian only looked at her with serious gray eyes and said he did not accept risks when it came to her. She did not know that Lucian had received intelligence that Anthony Ricci was planning revenge and that she was the target. It happened on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. Scarlett had just left the hospital after visiting her mother and was walking toward her car in the parking garage when she sensed something was wrong. Marco, who should have been waiting by the car, was not there. Instead, Scarlett saw a dark shape slumped motionless against the concrete pillar, a pool of blood spreading beneath him. She stopped, the survival instinct sharpened by years of endurance screaming in her head. Run! But it was too late. 3 men stepped out of the shadows, faces covered by black masks, moving with the coordination of professionals. Scarlett turned to run, but one of them grabbed her from behind and pressed a cloth with a sharp chemical smell over her mouth. She struggled, clawed, tried to scream, but the world was already fading. The last thing she heard before falling into darkness was a familiar voice. Anthony Ricci's voice, sneering that Moretti thought he could insult him without paying and that he would learn his lesson tonight. When Scarlett woke, she was lying on the cold metal floor of a truck. Her hands were tied behind her with plastic cuffs, her mouth sealed with tape. Her head throbbed from the after effects of the drug, her throat dry and burning. She did not know how long she had been unconscious, where she was, or what would happen next. But strangely, she did not panic. 3 years with Derek had taught her something vital about survival. Panic never helps. Panic only makes things worse. What she needed was to observe, to think, and to wait. She closed her eyes, forced herself to stay calm, and began to analyze. The vehicle was moving, so they had not arrived yet. She heard voices in the front, At least 2, perhaps 3. Her hands were tied but not too tight. She could feel a little give when she twisted her wrists. And most importantly, she saw one of the kidnappers sitting in the corner across from her, distracted by his phone, a gun carelessly tucked into his belt. Outside the truck, Ricci was on the phone with Lucian. Scarlett could hear his voice drifting in, triumphant and poisonous, telling Moretti he had a little gift for him and that if he wanted her alive, he should come alone, unarmed, to the old warehouse at Pier 7 within 1 hour, and that if he brought anyone else or any weapon, or arrived a minute late, she would die. Scarlett did not hear Lucian's reply, but she knew he would come. She knew he would do whatever Ricci asked to save her, and that was the trap. Ricci did not intend to release her whether Lucian came or not. He meant to kill them both and take Moretti's empire, but Ricci had underestimated her. He thought she was only a weak girl, a pretty thing Lucian cherished. He did not know she had survived 3 years of hell. He did not know she had learned how to endure, to observe, and to wait for a chance. He did not know that beneath her fragile exterior was a woman who had been crushed by life and still stood up again. Scarlett lay still, pretending to be unconscious, and slowly began to twist her wrists to loosen the ties. She had 1 hour. 1 hour to find a way out, or at least to warn Lucian that this was a trap. She would not let the man she loved walk into death for her. She would not let Ricci win. Scarlett waited. She lay as still as a corpse, slowing her breath until it was shallow and even, her eyes half closed as she watched the kidnapper across from her through her lashes. He had put his phone away, his head resting back against the side of the truck, his eyes heavy as if he were drifting toward sleep. The truck was still moving, the low engine hum swallowing all other sounds. The ties around her wrists were much looser now after 20 minutes of patient twisting and tugging. Her skin scraped and burning, but she did not care. Physical pain was nothing compared to what she had endured. The truck stopped. She heard the front door open, footsteps, voices at a distance. They had reached the warehouse. The guard inside the truck yawned and stood to check outside, turning his back to her. This was her only chance. Scarlett did not think. She acted. She wrenched her wrists free, and in the same motion grabbed a short iron rod rolling in the corner of the truck and struck the back of his head. He collapsed without a sound, his body hitting the floor like a sack. Scarlett had no time for fear or regret. She searched his pockets, found his phone, and silently thanked heaven when she saw it was unlocked. Her hands shook as she opened the map, checked their location, then opened messages, and found Victor's number she had memorized early in her job with Lucian. She typed fast, fingers stumbling on the keys. Old warehouse at Pier 7. Ricci's trap. At least 10 men. Do not let Lucian come alone. Then she sent the GPS location just as footsteps approached from outside. She slipped the phone back into the unconscious man's pocket, lay down in her former position, and pretended to still be bound as the truck door opened. 2 kidnappers dragged her out, hauled her into the dark, damp warehouse, and threw her onto the cold concrete floor. Anthony Ricci stood there, his face bright with triumph, rat eyes gleaming. Moretti will be here in 30 minutes, he laughed. Alone, unarmed, like a lamb walking into slaughter. All because of you, little girl. He should thank you for giving him a quick death instead of what I first planned. Scarlett said nothing. She only prayed her message had reached Victor, that Lucian would not come alone, that everything would be all right. She prayed for the first time in many years. Exactly 30 minutes later, the warehouse doors opened. Lucian stepped in alone, hands raised to show he was unarmed, gray eyes sweeping the room until they found Scarlett. For an instant, she saw relief in his eyes when he saw she was alive. Then that relief turned into cold fury when he looked at Ricci. Moretti, Ricci laughed, stepping forward with his gun. At last you have learned to obey. But unfortunately, I do not intend to keep my promise. You will both die here tonight. He raised the gun and aimed at Lucian. Scarlett wanted to scream, to throw herself in front of him, but she was too late, because at that moment everything happened at once. The high windows shattered. The back door burst open. Dark figures poured into the warehouse like a flood, guns in hand, moving with the precision of professional killers. Victor led them, his face cold as stone, and behind him came Moretti's elite guards. Scarlett's message had reached them. They had been lying in wait, and Ricci had walked straight into his own trap without knowing it. The fight was short and brutal. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse, screams, bodies falling on concrete. Scarlett pressed herself flat to the ground, arms over her head, heart pounding as if it would burst. She did not dare look up, only prayed Lucian was safe. Then silence. A terrible, hollow silence. Scarlett. Lucian's voice. She lifted her head and saw him running toward her, stepping over bodies, his face smeared with blood that was not his. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands shaking as he cut the ties, peeled the tape from her mouth, and pulled her into his arms as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice breaking. "God, Scarlett, I thought I was going to lose you." Scarlett held him, felt his wild heartbeat through his shirt, felt his body trembling with fear and relief. "I think I deserve a raise," she said hoarsely, trying to joke. "I just saved the entire Moretti Empire." Lucian laughed, a broken laugh mixed with a sob. He held her tighter, kissed her hair, her forehead, everywhere he could reach. "You are everything to me," he whispered. "Never scare me like that again." Lucian did not let Scarlett out of his sight after the kidnapping. He brought her back to his penthouse, where security had been tripled, where every window was bulletproof and every corner watched by cameras. Ricci had been taken alive and was being questioned at a secret location, but Lucian was still not at ease. He could not bear the thought of losing her. Not now. Not when he had only just found a reason to live. Scarlett showered and changed in Lucian's large bathroom, letting the hot water wash away the smell of the warehouse, the smell of fear, the smell of blood. When she stepped out wearing one of his white shirts that fell to mid-thigh, he was standing by the window looking out at the night city, his back tense with worry. She went to him, laid her hand on his arm, and Lucian turned. Gray eyes met blue eyes. No words were needed, no explanations. They had almost lost each other, and that made everything painfully clear. Lucian lifted his hand and touched her cheek, his fingers brushing her skin as if she were something fragile. "Do you want?" he began, his voice low and rough. "I can sleep in another room if you need space." Scarlett shook her head. She took his hand and drew him closer. "I do not want to be alone tonight. I want to be with you." Lucian searched her face for any sign of doubt or fear, but he saw only certainty, trust, and love. He kissed her gently at first, as if asking permission, then more deeply when she answered him. His arm slid around her waist and he lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to the large bed at the center of the room. That night they crossed the last boundary, not with haste or blind passion, but with tenderness so careful it made Scarlett want to cry. He asked before every movement, paused whenever she hesitated, let her set the pace as if her comfort mattered more than his own. With Derek everything had always been fast and rough, something to endure rather than something to feel. With Lucian everything was different. He treated her as something precious, his hands and lips moving as if he wanted to learn every curve, every scar, every story her skin held. He whispered her name like a prayer, looked into her eyes as if she were his entire universe. When it was over, they lay together in the dark, bodies entwined, breath slowly evening out. Lucian held her from behind, his chin resting on her hair, his arm tight around her waist as if afraid she would vanish if he let go. "You are mine," he whispered into her hair. "Only mine, and I am yours, forever." Scarlett turned to face him, lifted her eyes to his in the moonlight through the window. "Forever," she repeated. And for the first time in her life the word did not frighten her. She lay in Lucian's arms, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart beneath her ear, and felt something she had long forgotten. Safety, being loved, being cherished. Not for what she could give, but simply for who she was, Scarlett, her true self. And for Lucian, that was enough. 2 weeks passed in happiness. Scarlett moved fully into Lucian's penthouse while her old apartment on the Upper East Side was kept but rarely visited. They slept together each night and woke together each morning, and Scarlett began to believe that perhaps she was finally allowed to be happy. But the world of Lucian Moretti never allowed peace to last very long. The night came without warning. Scarlett was lying on the bed reading when the alarm blared through the penthouse, sharp and urgent, and before she could understand what was happening, Victor appeared in the doorway, tense, a gun in his hand, telling her to follow him immediately, pulling her through the hallway, past the living room where gunfire had already begun outside, to a wall that looked like any other wall until a hidden panel slid aside and revealed a steel door with a biometric lock. He opened it and pushed her inside. The safe room was small, but fully equipped with camera screens, a phone, and weapons that made Scarlett shiver. Victor told her to stay, not to open the door for anyone except him or Lucian, that the red button on the phone called Lucian directly. Then he locked her in, and on the screens she saw chaos, armed men storming the penthouse, and Lucian's men answering with precise, brutal force. And in the middle of it all, she saw Lucian moving like a lethal shadow. Calm, exact, unstoppable, and when she called him, his voice answered through gunfire, asking if she was safe, telling her he loved her, and she told him she loved him and begged him to live and come back. And then the line went dead, and she waited, watching the battle that felt eternal until silence fell. and she saw Lucian walking toward the safe room, wounded but alive, and when he opened the door and pulled her into his arms, she whispered that she was safe, and he had kept his promise. And then with something new in his eyes, certainty and resolve and love, he knelt before her in the wreckage and opened a small velvet box with a sapphire ring and asked her to marry him, telling her he had waited 4 months and almost lost her and did not want to wait another day. And Scarlet cried and smiled at once and said yes, 1,000,000 times yes, and kissed him there among the ruins. The wedding was held on a late summer day at Lucian's estate in Connecticut, small and intimate just as they had wished, with only Scarlet's mother in her wheelchair wearing the brightest smile Scarlet had seen since her father's death, with Mia crying through the entire ceremony and insisting they were tears of happiness, and with only Lucian's closest people present. Scarlet wore a simple but elegant white dress, her auburn hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and the sapphire blue as the ocean gleamed on her ring finger. And as she walked down the aisle toward Lucian, she saw something no one had ever seen on the face of the most ruthless Mafia lord on the East Coast, his gray eyes wet with tears, and his lips trembling as he tried to hold his emotions in. And he looked at her as if she were a miracle, a light, everything he had never dared to believe he deserved. 1 year later, Scarlet stood on the balcony of their new penthouse, the one Lucian had bought after the attack to begin again in a place without bloody memories. Her hand resting on her 7-month rounded belly, feeling the gentle kicks of the small life inside her, the sunset spilling over Manhattan like a blanket of gold and amber, turning the skyscrapers into giant candles. And Scarlet looked down at the city that once seemed determined to crush her, and now lay beneath her like a gift. She had changed so much in 1 year. She finished the online graphic design degree she had abandoned 7 years before. She began working on Lucian's new boutique hotel project as the lead interior designer, and her work was so well received that other companies reached out with offers. She hired an assistant, opened her own office in one of Lucian's buildings, built a career that belonged entirely to her. She was no longer the invisible girl in a shabby kitchen, scraping burnt toast into the trash and crying over a broken marriage. She was Scarlet Moretti, a rising designer, the wife of one of the most powerful men on the East Coast, and most importantly, she was herself. Her mother responded well to the new treatment. The doctors said the tumor had shrunk significantly, and there was hope for full remission. Catherine was strong enough to visit every week, to sit on the balcony drinking tea, and telling Scarlet about the books she was reading and the garden she was growing in the new apartment Lucian had bought for her. She would live to see her grandchild born. She would live to hold the baby in her arms, and to Scarlet that was the greatest miracle of all. An arm wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned into the familiar solid chest. Lucian rested his chin on her shoulder, his hand covering hers on her belly, and they stood together watching the city fall into night. He asked what she was thinking, and she said she was thinking of the girl in the kitchen years ago, who believed she was invisible and unworthy of love, and would die without anyone knowing she had existed, and that she no longer recognized. That girl. Lucian turned her to face him and lifted her chin, so his gray eyes met her blue ones, and said that girl was still there. She was simply no longer afraid, and that he would spend his life making sure she never had to be afraid again. She whispered that he had saved her, and he shook his head and kissed her forehead and said she had saved herself, and he had only given her a reason to want saving. They stood in silence for a while until Lucian suddenly knelt and placed his ear against her belly, asking their daughter if she had been good today. Scarlet laughed and asked how he knew it was a girl, and he smiled and said he just knew, and he was usually right about such things. Scarlet stroked his hair and looked into the gray eyes that had changed so much since the day they met. Still storm-colored, still capable of ice when needed, but now always warm when they looked at her. Always gentle, always filled with a love she knew would never fade. Below them, the city continued its restless rhythm. Danger still existed somewhere. Enemies still waited, and Lucian Moretti's world would never be entirely safe. But here in his arms, Scarlet found what she had searched for all her life. To be seen, to be loved, to be cherished, to be whole. She told him she loved him as she did every day, and would every day for the rest of her life. And he told her he loved her more, and pulled her close, and kissed her under the city lights, and said forever. And for the first time in 28 years, Scarlet believed in forever. The story of Scarlet and Lucian is a story of redemption, of finding light in the darkest places, and of learning to love oneself before being able to receive love from another. It reminds us that it is never too late to begin again, that even the deepest wounds can be healed, and that sometimes the best things come from the places we least expect. Life can be cruel and can push us to the bottom, but it is in the darkest moments that we discover our true strength. Scarlet was not saved because she was weak. She was saved because she was strong enough to accept help, to open her heart again despite being hurt, to believe in love after betrayal. And that is the most precious lesson this story offers us all. Thank you for listening until the end of the story. If it touched your heart, please like and subscribe so you do not miss future videos. Share it with those you love who may need a story of hope and redemption. We would love to hear how you felt about Scarlett and Lucian's journey, and whether you saw yourself in it, and which moments made you cry or smile. Please leave a comment so we can listen to the feelings from your heart. We wish everyone watching good health, a joyful life, and peace each day. Wherever you are, and however difficult life may be, remember that you deserve love, you deserve to be seen, you deserve happiness. Thank you very much. Goodbye and see you in the next video.